之前呢，曾经有观众问过我说，什么是玻璃体剥离？它跟视网膜剥离的关系是什么呢？还有啊，为什么要是你眼睛里面有看到一闪一闪的亮光，或是开始看到闪电的话，这有可能是一个非常可怕的警讯。要是说你年纪超过50岁，或者是深度近视超过500度以上的话，那你就更不能错过今天的内容哦。那我在影片结尾有做小总结，所以别忘了看到影片的最后哦。Let's take a look.
So hi Shirley, I'm glad you asked this question because we get this a lot in the clinic. So basically, on the back of our eye, there's a thing called the vitreous humor. 中文叫做玻璃体. So it fills up maybe about 80% of the total volume of our eye, right? So it takes up a big percentage of the total volume of our eyeball, and this vitreous is attached to our retina on the back of the eye, 视网膜. So when we were first born as babies, this vitreous is very viscous and it's very dense. But as time goes on, as we age, this vitreous will gradually liquefy, meaning it's gonna turn more into water than gel. And when this happens, the vitreous will want to separate from the retina on the back of the eye, and we call this posterior vitreous detachment, 后玻璃体剥离. So this typically happens around the age of maybe 50, sometimes earlier, depending on your age and depending on whether or not you are very nearsighted. Because for people that are very nearsighted, this process happens sooner and earlier. There's no way for us to predict how long it's going to take for this to finish, because everyone is different, right? What comes next? So typically when this happens, you can potentially have two different outcomes. Scenario number one is that when this vitreous detaches from the retina, it can separate very cleanly, and we call that complete PVD. When these two interfaces separate from each other very cleanly, that's what we all want actually, because it means that there's no complication. But the second scenario is that the vitreous is detaching from the retina, but it does so very uncleanly, meaning that some parts of the vitreous has detached already, but there remains a single point of the vitreous that is continue to adhere to the retina. And so this single point is when the vitreous is tightly attached to the retina. So it wants to separate, but it's not separating because of the tight adhesion. And this can create a lot of problem because this means that there is persistent tractional force between these two surfaces, and it wants to separate, but it's not separating until the tractional force gets large enough that it finally separates, but it creates a hole on the back of the eye, and that's called a retinal hole, right? 视网膜裂孔. And so this can be potentially a problem because if you don't catch this hole soon enough or early enough, this can potentially lead to what's called a retinal detachment, 视网膜剥离. Then, and if you don't catch this early enough, then this can potentially lead to blindness, depending on the location of the detachment and whether or not your macula, 你的黄斑部 is involved or not. Oh, and you're asking about flashing lights. So when this single point continues to cause tractional forces between the vitreous and the retina, because we know that the retina is like nerve tissue, right? So when you keep on pulling it, it's gonna cause your brain to perceive this as a flashing light because it gets like this physiological excitation between these two surfaces. So when you're going through a PVD, if you start seeing flashing lights, it means that this pulling action is happening. So you'll have to get your eyes checked by an eye doctor by doing a dilation so they can check the back of your eyes, making sure that you don't have a hole or like a tear on the back of your eye.
总结来说啊，第一，玻璃体剥离不代表你视网膜就会剥离， 可是少部分的人会因为玻璃体剥离之后，在视网膜上面产生一个小裂孔，就有可能会因为这样子而造成视网膜剥离。第二，深度近视会让眼轴变长，让眼底变得很薄很薄，增加你得到视网膜剥离的风险。第三，要是你眼睛里面有开始看到闪光、闪电或是流星飞过去，这有可能是可怕的警讯，需要赶快去眼科做散瞳眼底检查。第四，玻璃体会随着时间跟年纪慢慢的液态化，所以玻璃体剥离每个人眼睛都会发生，只是早或是晚的问题。那如果你都看到这边了，再给你第5个 bonus tip， 那就是如果说你眼睛里面有开始看到突发性飞蚊，或是你看到的飞蚊比平常之间突然变得很多的话，这也有可能是可怕的警讯，需要赶快去眼科做散瞳眼底检查。假如说你想要知道我对于中医对于飞蚊的看法的话，你现在可以点击荧幕去看我的反应影片。那我们下支影片再见喽，拜拜。